Grand Rising, my loves. This is your girl, if it's Queen. Shay. Prophet Levi, you already here waiting, huh, love? I hope all is well with you. I hope that the family is well. Your day is doing good, feeling great, feeling, you know, blessed and highly favored as I am. Today, this is going to be Spiritual Studies Session 5 by C.G. DAHLIN, Shamanism and Animalism, the Original Spirituality. Of course, y'all know this is my guy here. I don't worry about getting copywritten when I broadcast his lectures because, like I say, me and him, communicate on a personal level. So I've already told him what I've been doing, and he's happy with it. But as always, I must protect myself by saying that I have no copyrights to this content. That this is strictly for educational purposes under the Fair Use Act of 1976, 107. Now, my loves, without further ado, this is about an hour and 5 minutes. So y'all, get your smoke. I know Prophet got his smoke. Get your smoke, get your drink, get comfortable. Cause Empress finna what? Drop these gems on you, my babies. Shamanism and animism, the original spirituality. This is Spiritual Studies Session 5. What do shamans do? What was their role? What was their role in the ancient past and in modern day? This talk discusses the ways of the ancient past, where religion comes from, and how the beliefs still survive today. All right, my loves, get ready for these gems I'm about to drop. And if you like this content, please like, share, and subscribe, my babies. Leave me a comment or something down there in the box. All right, my loves?
Welcome to session 5. This session, we're returning to a topic that we started in the first session, which is of more of the spiritualist variety. So in the sessions 2 through 4, we covered more of the Abrahamic realm of things, whereas this time we're kind of returning to more of the word I always use for it is the wooey aspects of religion, especially in regards to before religion was religion. If you look up where all religions originate, it always harkens back to this concept of animism. And animism and shamanism, by extension, as we'll see throughout, the best way to define it is the belief that everything is spirit. Everything is spirit. Everything is alive, everything is conscious, everything is mutually participatory, and a certain element of self-governing and a certain element of immortality, immortal. Shamanism and animism are not purely in the past. It is still practiced. It has always been practiced. It has always been around throughout all the ages that we will discuss in the ancient world, throughout all of human history, the best way of putting it. So really this topic is going to span, as much as I can talk about it, it's going to span all ages. Mostly what I want to establish with this talk is the variety of animism and shamanism, and give us an idea of what it means and how it's diversified. So I feel like it's worth pointing out that shamanism is not dogmatic, and there is no prophet. There is no sacred text, set of rules. Many people who practice shamanism identify as Catholics, as Buddhists, any variety, really. It is not exclusive. So the kind of other central philosophy that I want to mention is the statement that human beings are seen as a part of nature and not something other than nature. And this would come into debate in many religions, especially when we mentioned Gnosticism being something very different than this world, being a fluke in this world, only being here by a grand accident. This is quite the opposite. We are it. It is us. So the goal by all these beliefs, more or less, is to live in harmony with the natural environment, to not go against the groove of things. It would be viewed, civilization, especially modern technocratic civilization, would be viewed as a sort of cancerous entity that has spread itself all over the surface of the earth. And that this is something that needs to be returned, that we need to return to spirit. Ask any shaman in the modern day what the modern day needs, and this is exactly what they'd say. We need to remember. We need to remember. So the act of a shaman, in its most general definition, is a healer, one who heals. Now, there's many ways that it's gone about, but it's always flavored in ritual magic, and I suppose you could call it clairvoyant knowledge. In the earliest days, so we're talking kind of prehistory, the shamans would be the ones to assist in the hunt, the ones to point out where the hunt should be, and also to make sure that none of the species goes hunted into extinction. They most notably, and this is a good distinction to make too, they are inherent in a community. They are an integral part of a community. Now, in the modern age, we have many people who are self-identifying shamans, but the true distinction here is that they need a community around them to truly embody the archetypal shaman. And their responsibilities, by modern terms, would sort of be like a priest, would sort of be like a mediator or a lawyer, we could just as easily say counselor, and of course a doctor. And as we'll see too, this is what would eventually be referred to as a witch doctor, very coercively. So whether in the ancient world or in the modern, shamans would be the ones to conduct rituals and ceremonies. So if we had a birth, a shaman would be there. If we had a marriage, a shaman would be there. If someone in the tribe was coming of age, the shaman would be there. Funerals, certain peak times of the year for harvesting, a shaman would be integral to these events. And if they weren't, this would be viewed as a bad omen, a thing of bad fortune. The other flavor that is inherent in shamanism is music. Now, it's not two things here. Music and we'll get into later, psychedelics. And these things are not, sometimes they're more true and sometimes they're less true. Not all shamans take psychedelics, and not all shamans necessarily perform ceremonies through music. So there's a variance in those two key factors. Both of these things solicit visionary experiences. That's the idea. And the shaman works through visionary experiences. They are basically a master trance worker. They are masters of the mind, and of the experience of extraordinary states, which gives them a very still and poised presence in front of anybody. So when it comes to the music, at least, what we'd see most generally is a drum, which has been forged in every part very intentfully, or a rattle, which again has been formed very intentionally, whether it's using smudging equipment for blessing people with the smoke of sacred herbs. They would use a shell. All the things that are being used are of the natural order, and quite intentfully so. I'll mention this more later, but in my work with a Lakota medicine man, a big part of even being introduced into an anipe, which is a sweat lodge, is that you have to understand why everything is where it is, what animal skins are being used, how they were treated, what herbs they're using, what specific use they have, why we put food in front of I believe it was a horse's skull, and why we don't eat until this time. Every part of the ritual, down to what words you would say when you would enter the anipe, has a purpose and has a reason for it. So we're talking about a very intentful act, very symbolic acts. That's another trademark of the shaman. So what I want to start getting into, that just served as a general basis, but what I want to start getting into is all the different ways that shamanism has been expressed around the world. And of course, we might have an assumption, especially when I bring up the word animism, that a lot of this is found in Africa. And that's usually where the association of the word animism is. People might think of things like voodoo, for instance. So a lot of these names, well beyond me just speaking of Africa, I'm likely going to have mispronounced, so of course forgive me. I'm not familiar with a lot of these beyond just reading them. But in Southern Africa, it's the Sangomas, and they're traditional healers of the Swazi and the Zulu people, and there's a few others as well. Again, just as I'd mentioned before, they're community leaders. They have a specific flair for divination, predicting the future, clairvoyance, as I mentioned, and herbal medicine. So for them, they play more of the part, as I understand it, as specifically healers, medicine men, which is generally a term more reserved for Native Americans, which we'll get to. So the Sangomas will take all means, herbs, animal parts, natural objects, rocks, create and grind them perhaps, and create special medicines that they call muti. So this is that medicine man. And in kind of more anthropological and scientific research done on the work of shamans, they're generally convinced that the shamans work through placebo in confirmation bias, that these herbs are in fact useless, but it's the whole charade of what they do that convinces people of its medicinal properties. And you can hear many testimonies as to it working for people, but the question is, how does it work? Is there something truly other that we don't understand that's going on, or is it simply something that's mental? And of course, this sort of question to the shaman would just be that it doesn't matter, it works. So the Sangomas is Southern Africa. West Africa, I think, is a different tradition practiced by the Fang and Mitsogo tribes, the indigenous people there. And this is for the Bantu people, and mind you, there's a lot of names I'm going to pass through here. The sect here is more of a religion, and it's the Bwiti. You can find them in Gabon, Cameroon, Congo, and Zaire. So the Bwiti is translated as dead ancestor, which I know that sounds a little ominous. Now, this is more of a religion, as I said, because it's more of a something that the locals, I think even the nations have designated as a national religion. And I think it's Iboga. They use what's called an ethnogenic sacrament, which is a psychedelic. It's a perennial jungle shrub, and they harvest its orange fruit, which produces psychoactive effects. The inner root of this is producing the psychoactive effects. And of course, as with many shamans, they use a complex initiation ceremony. And this is specifically used for men coming of age. So to pass through from being an adolescent into a man is to partake in this hallucinogenic ceremony. And something that we'll mention later, of course, too, is I feel like everybody has a general understanding or a familiarity with the concept of a spirit quest as it's done by the natives, where they would go out and find their spirit animals. And this is something that we discuss, but this is something that is a classic trope of shamanism and animism, is this spiritual journey that moves one into adulthood. And mind you, it's happening today, and it is flavored our past. This is, again, the original spirituality as it's always been in this world. So we have to give it credit where it's due. Now, one that I find particularly interesting in Africa is the Yoruba people. And they're interesting because they have an actual element of monotheism. I'm going to try to say this. Olodumare. This would be the god of creation and existence, the force that created everything. The Yoruba had very uncanny knowledge of the stars. They knew of stars that were not capable of being seen by the naked eye in Orion's belt. And when asked on how they know these things, it's through the shamans. How can you know these scientific discoveries? And they knew a good lot more than what should have been, by scientific measures, should have been capable to them. So I bring this up for two reasons. For one, we see two strange distinctions here in the ancient past. The Yoruba faith has existed for a long time. And here we see something that's different than a lot of other beliefs across the world. And that is, again, this concept of one God or one ruling force that is unique in the ancient world and shows a diversification from what we've seen elsewhere. And also, this Yoruba belief implies a reincarnation, a tunwa, as they call it. And usually the children would bear qualities of their grandparents. This is something that's also been studied when I was mentioning in our spiritualism talk. The fact that they believe it seems to make it ever more true. So that was just something I wanted to throw in there because it's something that I'll want to bring up later in how different religions bloomed out of shamanism, it being this OG religion. Now in Europe, I'm not going to talk about this much. We all know what it divulged into. Eventually, it came in Proto-Indo-European into Europe, and it eventually moved into all different forms of paganism. That much is clear. That much is just classic history. But something that's unique is, of course, all the cave drawings that they found, and the ones in France are particularly interesting, that predate what they associate humans to be around, basically. And these specific people of Europe had this strange practice. They speculate, at least, that they would crack open the skulls of animals and basically eat up their brain matter. And this would result in ingesting different chemicals that we are familiar with nowadays, dopamine, serotonin, adrenaline. And in eating this would have been thrown into, whether voluntarily or not, a psychoactive experience. This would have made them trip out, basically. So they learned of altered states through the consumption of animal brains, which we see some depictions of that across the world. And also I think it was like Raiders of the Lost Ark. And this is the origin of the bear cave cults, as they've been called, which is kind of ominous. And mind you, many shamanic traditions across the world have a very special place for the bear in their kind of canon. Now, we get the word shaman from a specific types of shaman that live in Siberia. So we're talking Russia here. And they've always been there, mind you. And they extend all the way to Mongolia as well. So shamans are a type of people. And there are many different words across all these cultures that I'm mentioning for shaman. But this is the one that English has brought in because of a study of an anthropologist of these people that popularized this to the modern world. So the shamans in Siberia serve as an intermediary between the spiritual and the human world. They are viewed as kind of not necessarily gatekeepers, but as travelers. And they help people through the use of spirits or helper spirits, which we'll find many different words for this too. Power animals, spirit animals, guardian angels is a little bit more of a classical term for it. And these spirits that they utilize come in many shapes and forms. It doesn't necessarily have to be animals, but oftentimes in shamanic tribes, it is animals that really take the helm. But of course, plants have spirits too. As mentioned, everything has spirits. So to these shamans, the actual shamans of Siberia, the key to all their rituals and ceremonies is this effort to transcend normal states of consciousness. So this is kind of where we're picking up, and I brought this up when in the Mithras talk last week. I'm going to bring up Santa Claus again because I mentioned that we inherited a lot of the symbology from Mithraism, but when it comes to this concept of magic, that Santa is magic, and the concept of reindeer, that he rides on reindeer, and the association with Christmas time and cider. This is where I have to bring up that oftentimes in many traditions of shamanism, the Amanita muscaria, or the fly agara or agaric mushroom, is their quintessential drug in Europe and Siberia. And so in order to ingest this drug, you couldn't eat it straight out. That would be poisonous. What you need is to feed it to a reindeer. Insert reindeer here. And you harvest its urine and you drink that urine, and that will produce the psychoactive effect. Now, as with many questions as to how the shamans know this, and of course, we might be implied to think that, you know, through time, they just kind of screwed around with things, and then they eventually realized through all their experimenting of drinking piss in the ancient past, where actually they claim that they know this because they asked the spirits themselves. The spirits instructed them. And they all have different names for these types of spirits. But this is yet again where we get the holly jolly magic association with Christmas, because these would be the times of harvest and using the reindeer to create the cider. And here comes the shaman up from the hill after he's ridden the reindeer to bring us the joy. So anyway, I want to move on with that, but I did want to mention that's always been a topic of fascination for me. Of course, the other something that I'll mention later is that the view of the shamanic people, not just these shamans, but all shamans, is that there is a connection between the cosmos and the nature that we experience here. And in that way, oftentimes, for us, at least in our kind of scientism understanding of the world, the cosmos seems like a completely different entity. Like as soon as you escape Earth and you move into the vacuum, things are very lawless, you know. There's all these places of extreme temperatures and extreme coldness and radiation and so forth. But to the shamanic worldview, this is all nature spirits. This is all nature work. There isn't this kind of the stars beyond are just as much a home to us as the planet is. And mind you, I'm being a little simplifying here, but it's this the flavor of this belief is unification. It's all a part of the same thing. There is no differences. We're not in some little ball. So before I get too much into the philosophy, because I'm saving that for the end, I wanted to mention that in Japan, a lot of people don't know this, but there's the Shinto people. And the Shinto predate the Japanese. This is definitely an interesting thing to look into. There are people in Japan before the Japanese, what we call Japanese, come to live in Japan, which there's a lot of history behind this, but they look different and they have different beliefs, and it is called the Shinto. And that Shinto translates into the way of the gods. So the Shintos believe in kami, which is spirits, which inhabit landscapes and living things. So again, this predating culture.
Man, this shit here is crazy. Drinking piss, I don't heard it. Well, I can't say I heard it all because I used to fuck around with a guy that liked to have golden showers.
Believes in something very similar to what we see, again, animism, shamanism, in something very similar that we see across the world still being practiced, and the beliefs of the ancient past. And these Shinto are completely distinct from cultural and religious influences from China, from the greater Asiatic faiths. The other, we'd call the people in particular the Ainu, A-I-N-U, Ainu. And of course, they worshipped bears. They had several archetypal animals for their culture. And as I mentioned before, these people share a common ancestry with the Mongolians and with the Siberian shamans, as I was mentioning. They all have a common ancestry. The shamanism here in Russia, in Siberia, and Mongolia is referred to as Tengerism. Tengerism. So interesting little tidbit there too, because it kind of defies some of our classic understanding of how history has unfolded. Now I want to spend, and mind you, my whole talk definitely isn't going to be setting geographics, but one that I especially wanted to mention here is Tibet. And it's the Bonpo shamanism. This is what predates Tibetan Buddhism, which, of course, when people think of Tibet, they think of the monks. Now, the Bonpo did something very different. This is going to kind of help to inform us on how religions spread from shamanism. They're a great example of this. In Bonpo, there is what we would refer to as specialized shamans. And we see this in some cultures, but not all. But certain types of shamans do certain types of work. So there's this concept, Ramshis, which is, get this, I'm going to read this verbatim. You are projecting out of the physical body through the aperture on top of the skull into one of three symbolic mirrors arranged in an altar. These three mirrors are gateways to the worlds of Laha, celestial spirits, of the world of Tsen, which is earth and mountain spirits, and the world of Lu, which is the subterranean water spirits. So this is getting a lot more wooey. It's getting a lot more kind of new agey sounding, or maybe occultic sounding. There are three zones in the Bonpo cosmology, and that is the sky, the earth, and the underworld. So what is above, what is here, and what is below?
As above, so below. As within, so without.
Also sounds pretty occult-like. Now, a specialized shaman in this tradition would leave their physical body and call forth a Pao, which is a spirit. And
oh yeah, a special shout, because I know there are those of y'all who be listening and watching, but you won't comment, or like or subscribe. But anyway, to those who don't know, this is a special shout out to the Information Man. If you don't know him, if you're not subscribed to him, please go over and like, share, subscribe his channels. He's a terrific guy. He's helped a lot of us new content creators. He has a channel in all cap letters, M4 Media Live. That's the show for content creators, where he, gives us knowledge that other people won't give us, and tips on, how could I say, enhancing our skills on our channels, and help. He's just helping us build our content, build our channel, and also helping us build up our self-esteem and our courage. Because I was very shy. I'm not shy if I know you, but as far as just getting on, a platform or something and speaking, I wasn't with all that. But he kind of boosted my morale anyway. So he kind of motivated me and inspired me to do what I'm doing. Well, I knew this was my purpose, but he kind of gave me that last little push that I needed to get on out here and do what I was supposed to do. So special shout out to Information Man, Info Media Live, Information Man Show Podcast. If you don't, just go over, check out his channels. Please like, share, and subscribe to him. So I just give him a special shout out. We appreciate everything that you do, Information Man. Much love and respect.
The shaman's vacated inert body would be utilized by the Pao. So this is exactly what I was talking about in the spiritualism.
What's going
session.
on, Big O?
They are doing mediumship. The shamans are doing mediumship. They are embodying the spirits of things that perhaps of people who are dead, or perhaps of completely other spirits. And this is to say that the spiritualism movement really wasn't something unique. You know, we think of this kind of stuff as somewhat.
I'm always over here dropping them gems on y'all. I'm trying to give y'all that knowledge. I'm trying to put something in your head besides a whole bunch of bullshit.
New agey, you know, the astral plane, but it's more of kind of like what Terence McKenna called it, the archaic revival, where these things seem new because of how far away from them we've moved as a people. So the guides inhabiting the body of the shaman would offer advice. So you ask, you know, how did the shamanic people of Siberia know to feed the mushroom to the reindeer? And this would be their answer, that the shamans used mediumship to ask nature what to do. They had other types of shamans, Nakpa, that were more of a kind of exorcist. So in this way, when negative spirits, so the way they viewed it is that certain spirits would become offended or upset, and that they would need to be kind of mediated. And again, the shaman is mediating between the physical and the spiritual. So in the same way that a shaman would work with somebody who's going through problems in their tribe, they would also be mediating with offended spirits to make sure that they don't lash out in some sort of way. Certain tribes, if you asked if shamans believe in a soul, they wouldn't say.
I know you down with them, but I'm talking to those who be listening and won't comment because I notice I have a whole lot of views, you know, afterwards. So I'm just, you know, giving him his props, you know, because he deserves
it. Their answer would be how many, because the idea is that people can fracture their souls, that their souls exist in other places, and that sickness is viewed as a need to retrieve where a portion of your soul has been left. And that would be the work of the shaman, would be to move into a trance to retrieve your soul and bring it back from one of these realms and to fix you by this kind of work. And of course, modern medicine would be more like, okay, just cut them open, you know, cut that thing out and medicate them. But this work was of the spiritual plane.
Shoot, it's you know, like I'm getting better with my thumbnails and everything. If he hadn't never started, you know, that content channel, I probably wouldn't never did this. You know, I probably would have still been in my head debating. You know, and then he helped, you know, as far as with the thumbnails and all that stuff. That's how I'm kind of getting better with that. You know, I'm still, you know, an amateur compared to him and Sir Hale and all of them. But you know, I guess maybe when I get that, you know, my platform grow a little more, I'll be able to, you know, get more items that I need and get get, you know, some help with this stuff. Because I'm trying, you know, I'm working on it. I think I'm doing a whole lot better than I was, especially with my thumbnails. But you know, I'm trying to get it down pat. What I really need help on is that editing. That's what I need to learn how to do.
They would view as where these diseases and where these cancers actually originate from. And so they view what modern medicine is doing as dealing with the symptom of the symptom and not getting to the root cause. You know, if a cancer metastasizes, it will continually return, right? So what is causing that cancer to begin with? And while we could blame physical things, we can't leave out the mind over matter aspect, or that these things might originate in other places. And this kind of drags us into other new age topics too, considering that Reiki has a lot to do.
For sure, Steve, for sure. Like I say, if we were on here talking about a whole bunch of foolishness, like you said, we probably would have had 1 million subscribers by now, all of us. Even Information Man, he has, you know, a good bit of subscribers, But you notice they really don't want to show up for the information that he putting out because he be talking about real shit. But he talk about stuff that we as a community need to know.
With that the first disorder of your body manifests in the auric field around you, in the etheric body around you. And then if it's allowed to continue, it will penetrate your manifestation, your body, and then become a physical ailment or disease. So the work of the shaman is to not only deal with what's wrong now, but also to prevent what is to come, to keep all things well. And their other general idea for why these sicknesses come about is the philosophy that we jump out of the natural rhythm. If each and every person was to be a part of the natural rhythm, to truly go with the flow or go with the Tao as it's referred to, then there wouldn't be any illness and there wouldn't be any strife to contend with. So if a tribe is utterly right in their emotions, in their egos, in their self-reflections, then none of these diseases would come about. And what we're seeing nowadays, of course, you know, with this coronavirus, as it's been called, is that the places that have been most affected are the cities. And that seems like a completely logical leap for the shamans, because these are the places that are the furthest out of the natural rhythm. The people who are nearest to natural rhythm would be the ones that do not have to worry about this illness. Nobody who is truly aligned or balanced needs to worry about this. And to those places that are collectively outside of the grain of where we should be, kind of forsaking the natural order. And who,
you know, I be here, Steve, but I be moving around. Okay.
naturally are the ones to be afraid of such a thing. That is the shamanic approach to this. I'm getting a little bit off topic here, but so when we hear of parapsychologists talking about the subtle energy field around our bodies, or when I was mentioning Kirlian photography capturing the aura around us, this might seem strange to us, but to the shamans, this is like, yeah, you know, what do you think we've been saying forever? So if a shaman does not recapture parts of the soul that are missing, this is what they would blame on this is how natural death would occur. Mind you, there are other reasons for death, and we're going to talk about that too. So I find the Bonpo extra fascinating because they did this thing where a long time ago they hid what they called termas, or the hidden treasure texts. And these termas were hidden because they came to believe that the world was not ready for what they had to say, which is kind of like what the Gnostics did when they buried the Nag Hammadi library. And so eventually they did resurface, and that they are being observed. And mind you, just for context too, the Bonpo
when he said that's what the Gnostics did when they buried I can't pronounce what it was, but he talked about the Dead Sea Scrolls. Those like the Book of Enoch and the Book of Thomas and all that. They buried them, and then and that's what the Catholic Church and all that didn't want nobody to know. So they don't want nobody to know the real truth.
And the Tibetan Buddhist monks do cohabitate. They are not at odds with each other. Bonpo shamanism has taken a kind of backseat in comparison to its historical standing, but it's still there. Now, when I bring up these termas, the one that's the kind of one that people might be familiar with is the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And why I find this so fascinating is through shamanic journeying and through a collection of people in the ancient past, through embodying spirits or whatever means that they used. They managed to chart an entire cosmology, all dimensions, the places that they would travel in the psychoactive experiences. So to those that have had experience with plant medicine, these shamans in particular would believe that there are places you go. There is a sort of map to show where you were, and that they attempted, talk about the work of a geographer is crazy enough to make a terrestrial map, but just try to wrap your mind around that they were attempting to map the multi-dimensional, where you would go in your dreams, where you would go in lucid dreams, where you would go in all these different kind of psychoactive effects. It was not subjective to them. They interpreted where we would go in hallucinatory experiences as objective places, as objective phenomena. So in regards to the topic of how religion seemed to spring out of the collective belief of animism and shamanism, this is a great example that they tried to come together to push for more answers beyond what their beliefs facilitated. And I think this is ultimately why humanity has split off in its beliefs so variously and with great complexity, is because of this ever-growing seeking. And mind you, not all people ever felt the need. Plenty of tribes have remained the same way for we don't know how long, but certain of us in human history felt the need to keep pushing this agenda, to keep inquiring more, supposedly beyond our means. And so the Banpo, in this way, showing their efforts, would distinguish themselves from other shamans in this belief of theirs. Not to mention that there are cultural influences too, how the land replies or what the spirits say to all these shamans across the world and how they're approaching said spirits would have perhaps changed the ways that they would conceive of the world. And also there's a discussion of language, which adds a whole nother complexity to this. So before I talk just straight philosophy some more, I have to address like the elephant in the room, and that's because it's Native Americans.
Yeah, I know that, Steve. They always be watching and lurking, because like I say, and after I finish the live, and once I go on my analytics, I see I have a lot, 50, 60 views, but they don't show up, during the live stream. I'm here. I be around here in the house doing little things. And the coach, of course, I told you I was a diabetic, so I had cooked some lima beans yesterday. I ate some of that earlier, but I was up there grabbing me a sandwich because I had to take my insulin. So that's what I'm gonna do now, eat me a sandwich. But I'm here a lot of times. If I don't say anything, don't think I'm not here. I am, and if I'm not here, I'll let you know.
This is animism. This is shamanism. You find all over a good complexity from the different tribes of the states. Something that's interesting too is a lot of these tribes would embody a kind of androgynousness or a worship of the hermaphroditic. And the idea is that shamans would oftentimes, if they were men, they would dress as women, and if they were women, they would dress as men, or they would try to embody the powers of both genders, because they found that we are less powerful if you are purely embodying one archetype, masculine or feminine. So
see, we both. We all embody both masculine and feminine energy. See, that's what I say. A lot of men try to act so hard. They're too scared to get in tune with their feminine side because they think people go look at them as they are faggot or something. But you can't always be, you got to learn how to balance things. It's about those scales, that Libra energy, see. You got to learn how to. That's why I tell y'all about the zodiac. I'm gonna start back doing some. I'm gonna start back doing some lives about the birth chart and stuff. I might do one tonight. I'm not. I haven't made up my mind yet. But y'all, that's why I tell y'all about the birth chart. You see, you're more than just your sun sign. You know, that's why you see I have one of my pictures where I have a Capricorn, a Taurus, and a Leo. See, your sun sign. I'll talk about that after a while. I don't want to get into that now. I want to finish this here. But that's why you need your birth chart, because when you get that birth chart, it helps you really navigate through life. And things that you've already gone through, it's already written in there. I mean, it'll blow your mind. I'm quite sure when I read y'all some of mine, everything that was in there, it was telling my life story. You need to learn how you learn the houses in your chart, along as well as all the signs and planets that are in your birth chart, because these different planets, they rule certain things as well. Your houses, 12 houses, just like there are 12 zodiac signs. I'm not going to see, once I start talking about it, I don't want to stop talking about it. So here we go.
Times we see in these cultures that there is a place for what we would call homosexual individuals. They would be en route to becoming shamans in these ancient cultures, or other times where we see that there is as many as I think 6 or 7 genders, or 5. There is the masculine, the feminine, the hermaphroditic, the masculine, feminine, and the feminine. And all this was a part of their culture because it was tied to the shamanic. Now, in the Native American tradition, there is this healer aspect, there is a community leader aspect, there is a therapist aspect, but the big one for them is that they are a divine spiritual communicator. They are supposed to inform the people of what is going on in this whole other sector of things. And to the natives,
what they don't understand is Christ lives in all of us. That's what I'm trying to let them know. That Bible is veiled in symbolism and allegory. You got to look deeper within. You cannot look at that Bible. Who in the world believe in immaculate conception? I never did believe in that. Now, like I said, I'm a preacher's kid. I never did believe that a spirit was going to impregnate a woman. Come on now, that's a bunch of bullshit.
This was within their belief. They wanted to know. And the particular trait of the medicine men of Native America is that their services would oftentimes be of barter for things like corn or maize, cacao, coffee, sacred crops, but most notably tobacco. Now, in the Lakota tradition, as I'm most familiar, the tobacco was a general currency with nature. If you were to harvest an animal, or if you were to harvest a plant, you would give it tobacco, because you never take without giving. There is a reciprocation in every exchange.
That's why they hit. That's what he's talking about. That's why they all these different books that people are now learning, and I broadcasted the Book of Thomas, the Book of Magdalene, and all that. Those were that's the truth. The Book of Enoch. Why you think they didn't put it in? They mentioned him in the Bible, but why would they not put his book in there? Because they didn't want people to know the truth. You have the power that manifests anything you want. Like I say, the Bible, if you just read it, and if you got a mind, he say you ask, you have not because you ask not. Come on now. You ask it, you will it into existence. It's your thoughts. That's why he say you can't worry about it. See? Oh, ye a little faith.
And that's why the white man, the colonializers, seemed so disrespectful and alien to these shamans, because it was this clear cutting and this pure taking that highly disturbed them. So, where do I want to leave off with this? The nature of peyote or peyote and the Nahuatl people, this is something that's generally well known. It's the small buttons on premature sprouts of a cactus, which have hallucinatory effects, mystical visions accordingly.
Okay. I'm a broadcast. I think I did one on sorry, I'm got my full of chip barbecue. I ain't quite got off that pork yet. But I think I did do a broadcast on what's going on today. Shout out to Prophet Levi. Absolute. How's it going, my love? Peace and blessings to you. They did a I think I broadcast one, but if not, I'd redo it. Where they talk about these plants and these herbs and all this stuff. Back in the day, our ancestors, they didn't have all this these pills and all that stuff, but they were healthier. They healthier than we are today. Why? Because they believed in all those herbs and stuff. My parents were older. When they adopted me, I was 2.5 years old, and they were in their 60s and 70s. They late 60s and 70s. My mother was a nurse, but let me tell you something. She used to talk about them cobwebs. That's why they talk about them spiders. The spiders, people, everything that's really good for you, they try to make it bad for you. See, spiders were really luck. Those cobwebs stuff, medicine. I can tell you, I was raised old school, baby. Like I said, my mother was a nurse, but she believed in those old school, those herbs and those roots and stuff, and those spiders with cobwebs and stuff. My mother used to come and fight when I was coming up. I might have a tooth that's loose, you know. Come here, Dee. That's what they call me, Dee. Let me see. Before I know anything, that tooth out my mouth, and you don't even feel a thing.
We see this as a giant staple of these cultures. They make art out of it. It's a part of their ceremonies. To them and other tribal groups, the use of peyote is imperative in maintaining the balance between the spiritual and human nature. And again, I just want to preface too that not all these cultures believe in using hallucinogens, but in our Native Americans, this is a pretty commonplace. And of course, I would be remiss to not mention ayahuasca as well. And this is another fascinating tale of how do you know about this? Because you need two different plants. One plant is the hallucinatory nature, and then the other plant is your means of digesting it and for it to even not poison you in your stomach. And how you cook it makes it the perfect kind of brew. And of course, scientists would be like, well, how do you know this? And then they would say, the spirits told us. And the ayahuasca ceremony is nothing to shake a stick at. You can connect with the dead. You can relive past life memories. You can experience entities beyond human comprehension, or what they contemporaneously call DMT entities. And it's horrifying. It's a horrifying experience. This is usually you'd be vomiting. You would be in an utterly alien world. You're experiencing emotions to degrees that you would never believe possible. It is viewed as facing your fears. It is something for death and rebirth, which is something I want to start to talk on. So the use of all these hallucinogenics and transitory experiences around the world, especially hallucinogenics, is this concept of allowing nature to do with you what it will, because this is you admitting to it or trusting in it to provide, to show you what it needs to show you. And so it's not that there shouldn't be fear, but it's not the type of fear that you might think. There is anticipation, sure, but you trust nature. So you would trust that even if you were to die, that this is not something horrible. And even though you are going to experience horrible things, this is a part of that trust. It's showing your commitment, which is sacred. So before I get on about that a little bit more, it's always a topic in any of these that I want to kind of mention the afterlife, because that's the kind of quintessential question of all religions and all spiritualities, is what it has to say about the afterlife. And in shamanism, there is no death. And that's not to say that they aren't aware that people die. It's just to say that they don't believe it's an end. An end is the concept of the Western mind. They look out into nature and they see that nothing ends, that everything moves into other things. Yes, a tree decomposes, and then the tree assists the fungi, or assists the worms, or assists all these other things, and nothing leaves. So we, in their mind, live forever. Our soul is immortal. If this place exists, we exist because we are this place. Now, they do acknowledge, of course, that the act of physical death that we will all undertake is a dramatic transition, which is dramatic because it includes us leaving the physical vessel. And this is also dramatic because we're moving into something that we are not familiar with, or at least right now we're not familiar with it. And the space that we occupy, and our experience of this space that we occupy, is eternal. Like, we do move into the next realm or another way of seeing it, but it's still nature. So it's a lot for us to dissect, being in our indoctrination of the Western world. It's a lot for us to understand and to be able to ask the right questions. We can ask a lot of questions about what they mean, but we have to understand where they're coming from. So the fear and anxiety of death is the fear of the body. They don't view it as the fear of the soul. And again, the end seems absurd to them, the idea of the end. And they actually have a kind of welcoming of death because they assume or understand or believe or know that upon death, the mystery will be revealed, or will be lived in, or you will be subsumed in the mystery. So there's this acknowledgement of the unknown, that there are greater things, and that we find it a blessing to move into that, to be able to see it, to move beyond the blinders of being inhabited in a body. And to the shamans, who are people who understandably use out-of-body experiences regularly and have thrown themselves to the gutter of death over and over and over again, to the point where they have become so familiar with the process that they have nothing else to say other than it moves, it moves, it goes on. So before talking about that too much more, I want to touch on this fact too, that something I haven't mentioned is that the shamans are also associated with the trickster. And we might think that that's a little coercive, because it might make it seem like they are trying to get a leg up or trying to be manipulative, which many people would assume of them via the name witch doctors and so forth, divine healers. But the trickster essence is that they have a kind of guru-esque way of answering questions. If you ask them philosophical questions, then they'll kind of have this way of spinning you around in the ways that the gurus of India do. It's that kind of Brahmin essence. You know, I thought, hey, shaman, I thought I saw you earlier collecting herbs, but I understand that somebody else saw that you were meditating all day. And the shaman will say, yes, you did see me. I took the body of an eagle and was collecting the herbs while I was here. My body was here meditating. And so there's all sorts of these ways of not just messing with people. And again, it's kind of hard for us to understand through our context, but at least in tarot, the very archetypal essence of the Godhead, or the most enlightened one, is the Fool. And in that way, the Fool doesn't really know anything. They just are a part of it. They are it. They are involved in the subliminal nature of all things. They aren't a priest because they aren't trying to inflate their egos. They're not trying to profess. All they're doing is living. And that's why they would call it in tarot the Fool, but in another way, we could call them the trickster or the jester, or what is in the deck as the joker. And the joke is the advice of the shaman. Okay, where do I go when I die? Well, where have you always been? Or the joke sounds something like, everything is certainly uncertain, or the only thing that doesn't change is change itself. When we get down to the bare bones truth of reality, it sounds like a joke, and this is what they've called the cosmic giggle. So before I close up too, I want to just kind of make this a little bit more personable too, and kind of dissect some of the things that I've brought up. The standard shamanic understanding of the world, and I briefly mentioned it, is that there is the higher realm. By higher, it doesn't mean transcendent, it just means it's up there. There is where we are, and there is the lower realm. In a shamanic journey, if you're moved into a trance, you go into the lower realm to find your power animal, or your spirit animal, or the spirit that will help you. The lower realm takes the form of a fey land, or a fairy land, or earth that was never touched, and an abundance of natural beauty infinitum. And this is where you go to find your power animal. And say you find your power animal, and you do this either through a deep trance experience, or you do this through a hallucinogenic experience that you are given when you move from adolescence into adulthood. So the spiritual journey to find your power animal wasn't necessarily a journey physically. They wouldn't go physically and starve out in the desert. I mean, maybe, but more often than not, we can assume that this was an inward journey, not an outward journey. So when the natives were talking about this and trying to explain this to, you know, the colonializers, they would assume that they would just go out physically. But no, this was an inner journey. And in the lower realm, you find your spirit animal, and this is how they would get their name. So say if your spirit animal was a deer, you would dance the way of the deer. The music that you would play, you would dance out your spirit animal so that you can embody it. And this is a way of feeding the essence of that spirit, which makes it want to assist you. We can see how this concept divulged into the world and what we associate with primitive beliefs, that we have to sacrifice a woman to the god of the volcano, or the god will kill us all. And so this is where we get it. Like in the Greek pantheism, you know, you had to make sacrifices to the gods. So this was a kind of movement from this original understanding of spirits into what we associate with the ancient world. This kind of what we assume frivolous actions of needlessly killing people, or people needlessly killing themselves, like what people see in the Aztec culture, for nothing, for no scientific reason, for no logic. This was an acknowledgement of this other world, of which the Western society seems utterly blind to. And there's reasons for that, but that's a whole nother talk alone. Now, my experience with the Lakota, at least, was that, oh gosh, I don't want to go. Well, this is a lot of what I'm telling you too, but I'll get to that in a second. But the upper realm is the realm of the ascended masters, or of the moved on shamans. So there is no hell, and there is no heaven as we've conceived it. There's no duality. All is nature. But the upper realm is the place of, I suppose you could say, more of the intellect and more of mind. And this is where you would go to seek larger answers. Whereas you could ask the spirits of the lower realm, the animal spirits and the plant spirits, of things that are more pertinent to this world. So what plants should we get for harvest? When should we hunt? These kind of, what weather will come? And this is how the shaman would be able to know all these things, by speaking with them, by being friends with them effectively. Now, what I was trying to get to is that my experience with the Lakota was that they would invite everybody in. We had Buddhists, we had Christians. We would come to honor all the ceremonies of the medicine man. Say what we were supposed to say when we were supposed to say it, do the actions as we were supposed to do, move into the Inipe, which was the sweat lodge, which was all covered in animal skins, have hot rocks that had been prepared from the day before over a fire, pour the water over the fire. The water had also been sanctified, start to sweat it out. Drums would be in there. Ancient songs that have always been sung would be sung. And to the natives, they had the concept of the grandmother, or the kind of beginning spirit that brought gifts to all the different tribes of the Native Americans. And to the Lakota, the grandmother gifted them the drum. And to another culture, they would gift them the pipe. And each tribe had its own gift from the grandmother, and all the tribes were entrusted to kind of come together to share the gifts of the grandmother. Again, this seems kind of strange to us, but all the songs that we would sing were told to them by the grandmother. So this is the way that you call the spirits of the north. This is the way that you call the spirits of the south. This is the way that you cast a circle. And we would call all the spirits to join us in the Inipe to basically carry our good intentions for the world. No selfish prayers would ever be given. And in this space, through sweating, through music, through singing, you would have a psychoactive effect. You would be changed by these experiences, so much to the point where you could start to see the movement in the darkness, beyond the glimmer of the steaming rock. So the two last things I want to mention before I come to a close, because I've already taken up my full time here, is that there's this fascinating tale of shamans having competitions with each other in the old world, where they would hide things and tribes would come together. And the competition would be which shamans could know what the other shamans were hiding. So this would be how they would compete. This would be a way of sharpening each other's clairvoyance. And so, like the what do I have in my hand kind of thing. And so they would just go back and forth and guess, or not guess, come to know, ask their inner guide.
What I told y'all about music and stuff. Music and love, that's the highest vibration, baby. Love is the highest, and music is next to that.
And if they could guess right, then it would continue. And whoever lost would lose a bet. You know, you guys get this much of the corn or this much of the tobacco, right? So this would be their kind of like sports in a way, what we would understand as sports. And I personally love that. It's a whole, it's a sharpening the shears of the mind and extrasensory ability. It's the old tale of how the shamans would compete. So the last point that I want to get to is one of the main things that I wanted to talk about when bringing all of this up is how the religions blossomed from this, why we ever felt the need to separate from nature. And that's a very it's a curious question, you know. I don't really have a good answer. I've got a lot of kind of ways to entertain it and to speculate about it, but it's a question of human history as to why we ever felt the need to go so heavy down this path that we're on now. And I think the modern age is a kind of existential crisis in all the Renaissance that of kind of trying to look back and understand the point where we went wrong. Why has everything turned so greedy, so needy, so exploitative, and where did we go wrong? And again, I want to say that, you know, all the shamans have ever said is that this we need to return. We need to return to the ways of the spirit. We need to listen to the spirit. We need to believe, but more than anything, we need to trust. We need to trust in where we live and what we exist in our belongingness in this, that we are not a fluke, that we're not some strange entity that is a sort of abomination to this world. We're not a virus. We are here to protect it. That's we right. are here to be, to make a home for all things, to facilitate life. You know, we have the capability of helping all animals, of helping all plants. That's what we're here to do, and that's what the shamans have been holding the torch of through time. And why we felt the need to step in another direction, I think, is rooted in our curiosity and in our aspirations from to all sorts of various beliefs, all sorts of splittings, all sorts of different ways of conceptualizing the situation that we're in. And I'm not one to say, I'm not one to completely take the shamanic approach here. I'm not one to say that, you know, of all of modern civilization is an abomination and, you know, destroy it or anything like that. I believe that every faith, religion, idea of the world has its own credence and its own curiosity. Exactly. And I want to delve into all of it equally. But I think that it's worth saying that a return to basics is a very strong lesson that we should take in modern society. And I think that I don't think that all this time that we've spent as civilization is a waste. I think that we need to learn how to marry what we've acquired through this time with what has always been there that we've seemed to neglect this whole time. And it's not about us discovering the truth as much as it's us remembering the truth.
Now, before this next one, the next up is CJ DAHLIN on tarot. But before that, I'm gonna give y'all a little, you know, a little quote, motivational quote for the day. A healthy mind does not speak ill of others. I say, my loves. Y'all want another one? As you breathe right now, another person takes their last. So stop complaining and learn to live your life with what you have. See, I might give y'all another one here. Yeah, this is a good one here. Loyalty is a two-way street. If I'm asking it of you, you're getting it from me.
Welcome to Spiritual Studies Session 22. Rather fitting that this is 22. I've been planning on this one for a while. So in order to understand today's topic, which is tarot, we've been talking a little bit about occultism. For those of you listening to this session does stand independent. You don't need to hear the others. The others do help. But if you want to understand this topic more, you'll find more about occultism in this course. So today, in focusing on tarot, we are explaining the history of the cards themselves. We're explaining what tarot is and how it's been misunderstood. And then we are going over the...
I got another quote for you, because this is something I say all the time. You could be the most beautiful person in the world, the most handsome man in the world, the most beautiful woman in the world. You could be the finest thing walking. But if your heart ain't right, you still ugly on the outside. One beautiful heart is better than 1,000 beautiful faces. So choose people having beautiful hearts rather than faces. I say, my love.
Kind of fundamentals of how to understand tarot. So in this hour or so session, you're going to get a rounded perspective and understanding of a little bit of everything about tarot. So first, what is tarot, right? Basically is the most popular form of divination in the modern world. In the ancient world, which, by the way, if you want to learn more about this, go to the divination topic and spiritual studies course. Anyway, in the ancient world, we had tea leaves. You could use the entrails of fish. You could use different plants. You could roll dice. There were all sorts of ways to divine the future. Astrology is another one. People think of crystal ball.
If you have good thoughts, they will shine out of your face like sunbeams, and you will always look lovely. I say.
when they think of this stuff, psychic stuff. And really, when it comes down to tarot, you could say that those that read them are psychic, if you want to get into that. However, someone who is familiar with understanding the language of symbols is capable of doing it one and the same. There definitely is an artistry when it comes to tarot and understanding it.
The less you respond to negative people, the more peaceful your life will become.
But what I want to clear up right away is that many people believe that they don't want to be read because they're afraid of getting a bad card. There are no bad cards, really. We'll go over that towards the end of the talk, the specificities. They don't want to get a death card. They don't want to get a devil card. They don't want to get a hanged man. None of these are bad in the way that people think of it. It is over sensationalized. Also, this talk of tarot being aligned with conjuring spirits and devilry. This is silly. This is nothing other than a tremendously silly approach. If somebody acts...
The strongest people make time to help others, even when they're struggling with their own personal problems.
Really looked into tarot, they would realize how terribly wrong they are, and that most of this can be chalked up to fear-mongering Catholicism.
Just be yourself. Let people see the real, imperfect, flawed, quirky, weird, beautiful, magical person that you are.
Why is tarot so popular is an interesting question. And I'm not saying it's tremendously popular. I'm just saying popular compared to other forms of divination. And the reason is that it is a lot more directed. There is a lot more, it's a lot more matter of fact. It's a lot more spelled out than other forms of divination. It gives you more.
Guard your heart, but do not make it forbidden. But do not make it a forbidden place for everyone. There will be people who are worthy of entry.
Detail to go on. Thus why it's really caught on. But anyway, that's a brief introduction as to the ideas. But I want to spend a good amount of time here talking about, well, where did this all come from? How did this start? And I'm going to start and set the tone.
This is a good one here. Then I'm going to let it play. 1 million likes will never be enough if you don't love yourself. I say.
Very fast and say that people don't even know where the term tarot came from. There are many different explanations. So it's Taoist and Chinese. Some people have said that it's Latin, combination of and which means the speaking wheel. Others say it's Indo-Tartar, which is kind of like a reference to Zodiac. Others say that it's Hebrew, meaning like the word Torah, tarot, Torah. This
shout out to Prophet Levi, Absolute Warrior. Shout out to Steve's YouTube channel. Shout out to Mary 23. Shout out to, let's see who else I had in here earlier. I don't want to forget nobody here. Big O, shout out to y'all. I appreciate y'all coming in and rocking with the Empress. Now, if I don't have nobody else in this chat, I'm gonna have Prophet, and I'm gonna have Steve, and I'm gonna have Tina. I don't see her today, but usually she here. I could always look for them three. So I love you all from the bottom of my heart.
Word Torah, meaning law, interesting. Or, some could say that it comes from Egyptian, from tar, which means path, and ro, which means regio or region.
Instead of buying your children all the things you never had, try teaching them all the things you were never taught. Boom, fire.
So the path or the region, which path would be a good way of understanding what tarot is, illuminating the path in front of you. We see in the etymology of the word tarot that in Old Italian, it was referred to as tarocchi. We can try to trace that to Arabic as well in the word.
Pay close attention to the people who don't clap when you win. You know what that means? Them your enemies.
Araha, which means rejected or put aside, something that's put aside. Interesting note there. And this is all just to say that there's many ways that we can trace the word alone. So in regards to where it comes from, you see, and here's something to distinguish straight away. It is a card game. Tarocchi is a card game.
The most confused we ever get is when we try to convince our heads of something our hearts know is a lie.
Permanent tarak.
April's got that fire for you, boy.
Taros is literally a card game, like Uno. And that this is more or less how it started. It started as cards, just a card game, play spades, play Texas Hold'em, whatever, a fun pastime. However, this idea of cartomancy or divinations through cards is linked to a number of different traditions, much like the name.
That's right. You can regular play. See, I told you I was a preacher's kid. My father didn't play that mess about no damn cards because I told you he knew because he was a master mason. He knew them cards. You read cards. Playing cards were really the first tarot cards. You can read you can read playing cards just like you can read tarot cards. The diamonds in the playing deck are the pentacles, which represents earth energy, which is me, Capricorn, Taurus, Virgo. Okay, that pentacles is what it is in the tarot deck, but it's diamonds in the playing card deck. Okay, spades, those are swords. That's air energy. In the tarot deck, it's called swords, but in playing cards, it's the spades. That's Aquarius, Libra, Gemini. The clubs are the wands. Clubs wands in the tarot deck. Clubs in the playing cards. That represents fire. Leo, Sagittarius, Aries. Then you got the hearts in the playing cards. In tarot, they're the cups. That represents the water. Scorpio, Cancer, Pisces.
Tarot. So you could say that it's coming from the I Ching. It's inspired by Asia. You could say that it's inspired by the Indian Tantra tradition, the Tantric tradition. You could say that it's inspired by the hieroglyphs of Egypt. And you could say that it's inspired by the Kabbalah of Jewish mysticism. It's not wrong to consider that these symbols of tarot are coming from the Book of Thoth, as mentioned in Hermeticism. It's also not wrong to say that they're coming from the 64 hexagrams in the I Ching, which, by the way, the I Ching is more than 3,000 years old. So that's a real long story there. And it's not wrong potentially to say that it came from the gypsies. Now, to talk about that a little bit, I think everybody should really know this. Gypsies come from originally left India, and there's a number of stories as to why. I'm not going to get into that, but it was a migratory time, and some of them went to the Middle East, and some of them went to Egypt. And these particular people that went to Egypt, as they went to Europe, were called gypsies, like Egyptians. Okay, gypsies, just drop the E, right? So they're calling them Egyptian, which you can see how kind of like bullish that understanding is. And the idea is that these gypsies came into knowledge of esotericism in Egypt and brought that over to Europe, which would subsequently inspire the deck that we call tarot. The symbolism of the cards would therefore be derived from Egypt and fortune telling. Now, the other way that we could look at this is say that it's all about the Knights of Templar. We could say that that the Knights of Templar, in which, by the way, were dismantled in 1309, had accumulated a tremendous amount of wealth and knowledge of secret society material. They participated in gematria, which was the decoding of letters and numbers in the Bible. So they were definitely into esotericism and Kabbalah accordingly. And to pick up some of this occultism or some of this, woo-woo that goes along with the story of tarot, could be linked to the Templars accordingly. I mean, you go to their Gothic cathedrals and you see all this symbolism. You read how into alchemy they were. You learn about how they had these very set rules that you could not let anybody see you make gold, you know, to hold the secrets. So all these things would kind of give a squinty eye towards the Templars being something a part of the story. However, scholars are very adamant to say that this started as a card game, nothing more, no more inspiration needed. The occultism came later. That much might be true, but the occultism that came later also had roots. So this is a very complicated story. Not just the word itself, but also where's this inspiration coming from? Where did these ideas originate in? It tends to, in explaining any one of these things, it tends to fan itself out tremendously. So you could say, if we're dealing with the regular story, hey Connor, get to the real nitty gritty solid story of this, right? You could say that it all started in the 1200s with the Gypsies or the Templars giving ideas. And then you could say that in the 13th century or 14th century, that the actual cards started to be made after this knowledge had been around for a while. So the people that brought them are also thought to be the Chinese, in the sense of inspiring the card game based off of something that's existed in China for a long time, which is the game Mahjong, M-A-H-J-O-N-G. Also thought that the Islamic Mamluk cards are an inspiration. So now we're bringing, you know, Islam into this too. So it could be Asia, it could be Europe, but during this time, 12th century to 14th century, we see that the ideas are there and the cards are being made for the first time. So the first recorded date of actual cards seems to be 1367. These cards, by the way, have never been banned by the church. Back in the day, the Renaissance, or not the Renaissance, the Inquisition and the church never disallowed for these cards. So the idea of them being very risque or devil worship, again, is not substantiated. So the first time that we see a recognizable deck, as we might call it, in tarot, not these kind of more anarchic early beginnings, these kind of prototype cards. The first time we really start seeing it is 1440 and 1450 in Milan, Florence, Bologna, all in Italy. This is when we start to see the regular four-suit pack, which everybody knows these cards, you know, all the numbers, spades, clubs, so on. But what makes them tarot in particular is the inclusion of what are called trump cards nowadays, but back then were called the Triumphi cards, which is the whole deck would have been called the Carte dei Triumphi, which would have been triumph cards, which we now call trump cards or trumps. So these are found, as I mentioned, in 1440. So these are the trump cards are really where you get the hard and fast esotericism of tarot, the story of tarot, which I'll explain more later. But the earliest decks are all hand painted. Mind you, you know, here's this whole discussion of the printing press, right? So since they were hand painted, it's generally thought that they were rather small, and it is generally 100% true, actually, that it was purely a thing for aristocrats. You needed the money to commission these cards until later, and the printing press came out, and then mass production was possible. But that didn't mean that they got super popular. what really made them popular was the Italian Wars. And this spread it outside of Italy to Switzerland, to France. It would get very popular in France. And back in this time, we're talking about the Tarot of Marseille. And this was the kind of OG deck, the original cards is the Tarot of Marseille. However, later on in the 18th century, this is where we see this big revival of the cards, bigger than ever, all around Europe, with few exceptions. One of the exceptions is Britain and Ireland. French tarot really took it off much later too, in the 1970s. That really took off in the 1970s in general, but especially the actual card game again. So I'm telling you kind of two different histories here. I'm telling you about the formation of the cards, but I'm also telling you about its formation of occultism. So these stories are intermixed, right? There's the card game and there's the divination game. And these are two different things. So in France, in Europe, all across what used to be the Austro-Hungarian Empire, you'll see people play the actual tarot game. So keep that in mind. You know, that's a portion of confusion to be had all over, right? So the pictures became stylized over time, and this would attract the mystics, the spiritualists that later would become convinced that they were capable of divination, that you could use the cards for divination. This is the general understanding of as the cards have gone. Like I said, first it was just a game, later comes the divination, but before the game and the later divination, the knowledge was there that would later become a part of the cards. That's the general understanding. You can mix things up a lot. Like I said, this is all pretty wish-washy. But what is for sure is that the one that really would bring occultism to tarot was Jean-Baptiste Elinet. And we're talking the 1700s here. So he is the one that's responsible for making this much more popular and making this much more occult. So he's the one that issued the first divinatory deck, exclusively for divination, rather than something for entertainment or to show off in aristocratic parties. But alongside Jean-Baptiste, we have Antoine Court de Gébelin, which is another notable name in the history of tarot. Again, well, in this case, it's a lot more explicit because Gébelin is a Freemason, and he decidedly traces these cards back to the Egyptians, tying them to the occult, saying that the cards imbibe or embody the ideas such as Osiris, Ra, Isis, and the like, that the artwork is synonymous to the Egyptian hieroglyphics, like we said before. So now we got it in the hand of an occultist and a Freemason, which Freemasons are essentially occultists as well, and they are writing books and popularizing this. When it comes to Gébelin, I hope I'm saying his name right, Gébelin, he's the one that first set out the idea in 1781 that the cards are tied to Hebrew letters. If you get a deck now, the Thoth deck or the Rider-Waite, you'll see that the trump cards have not only an astrological, alchemical sign at the bottom, but also have a Hebrew letter assigned with it as well. And we can thank that Hebrew letter to Gébelin. He's the one that made that connection, the Freemason. And he's the one that included marrying those two traditions together, or remarrying those two traditions together, depending on how we want to look at this. Later on, we would see this guy, Eliphas Levi, in 1856, tying the Kabbalah to tarot, which that would be, you know, kind of implied if the Hebrew letters are already there. But again, as I mentioned before, Kabbalah's secrets or Kabbalah's wisdom has only recently really been made available to even the occultists. It was kept under very tight lips for a long time. So that's why this is showing up later. And then, you know, you have the Golden Dawn, as I mentioned last week in the Hermeticism talk. Their leader, Samuel Mathers, or Samuel Liddell McGregory Mathers, head occultist, former Freemason, making tarot a default part of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. So here, as I've mentioned before, we see the confluence of Hermeticism, tarot, ancient pagan practices all coming together and being brought up, emblemized by the Golden Dawn, making it subsequently a lot more available to the public. But right after this time too, in our whole story here, this is when we're seeing in 1910 the Rider-Waite deck first being created. This is by a mystic, a academic, a visionary named Arthur Edward Waite. Waite is the one that came up with the, well, I don't want to say came up with, cooked up, researched, looked into, collected the knowledge that would create the original OG tarot. For those that don't know, the Rider-Waite deck is considered the kind of quintessential tarot deck, because there are many to choose from nowadays. He commissioned Pamela Coleman Smith to do the illustration. So luckily enough, we have the name of both the illustrator and the guy who came up with it, right? So Waite was he was well acquainted with occultism. He wrote many books on Kabbalah, on black magic, grimoires, ceremonial magic. He was very into this topic, and he became infatuated with tarot, and thus why he created the deck, and thus why it has such a bravado about it, because he knew what he was doing. And he's quoted with saying, "The true tarot is symbolism. It speaks no other language and offers no other signs." So for Waite, tarot really is about knowing how to read the symbols. Anything else is confusion. And him putting this out there is yet again popularizing it, making it more accessible. This would capture the attention of the derelict mystics and the adepts of different secret societies. And then our last kind of step on the history of the cards of tarot and the occultism is Aleister Crowley. He created the Thoth, the Book of Thoth, the Thoth deck, in 1944. That was the last major influence of tarot. And I think just about everybody's somewhat familiar with Crowley, right? Falling out of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, creating Thelema, always being a big show about him, ceremonial sex magic, so forth. And regardless of what you think of his, endeavors, the Thoth deck is also not equally respected, but nearly equally respected to the Rider-Waite. It is also a very tried and true deck with honestly few differences than the Rider-Waite deck. There's some name changes and differences in art, but a lot of it's fundamentally the same. Nowadays, we see ever since the 70s, especially, a tremendous more amount of decks. Some I will prize higher than others because, like Rider-Waite said, it's all about the symbolism. So a lot of the modern decks go for kind of gimmicky themes, which I'm not going to say are all bad. Don't get me wrong, but to lose the symbolism of the cards is to lose an entire other layer, an entire level of depth that the cards are supposed to have. So as I mentioned before, you would think during this whole history that I've spoke of here that the church would have something to say about it. And in all the Inquisition documents, the tarot deck is never mentioned. At times, the church did outlaw gambling, but like I said, the deck, the cards were of a board game. It was for fun. And also, I should note that it's advantageous that they never got rid of them because, as I mentioned, the cards are associated with the aristocratic class, the richies. So, you know, whether laws pass, the laws have always been for the poor. The laws don't apply to the rich. So they would never do things to oust the rich, right? Because who's paying the communion baskets? Anyway, so this is the point where I want to start getting into actually
This the deck of cards he's talking about right here. That Rider-Waite. This is the original deck right here he's talking about. Look at that. What up? See them pentacles right there? Earth energy. This is what he's talking about. These right here. Yeah. Them wands right there. Just that boom boom. The hangman. Pisces energy. Oh yeah. Your girl that deep. Oh yeah. I got plenty of dates over there. Intuition on point like a motherfucker.
Standing tarot itself. You know, the first 30 minutes get into the historical context. Last 30 minutes get into what the actual meat and potatoes is. So if you're a practitioner or if you're somebody who's getting into this or you're just curious, this is going to give you either to the advanced or the beginner different ways of approaching the cards, understanding the cards, the different suits, and all the different categories that they fall into. So we'll begin with the different suits. And mind you, all of tarot is synonymous with the regular card deck, you know, aces, jokers, kings, queens, spades, hearts, right? All of this is synonymous. So anyway, let's get into it. Okay. So, cups. Cups are corresponding to hearts. So in tarot, it's cups, and in the regular deck, it's hearts.
What I just tell you.
If you pull a cups card, cups cards are always associated with emotions. They represent water. And they represent the direction of west. And they represent the season of fall. In a reading, pulling a cups card, again, has to do with emotions. So what does this mean? It could be in regards to happiness. It could be in regards to love. It could be in regards to decision making. There's an association with emotions in general. It has everything to do with the emotional part of the consciousness. The emotional part of decision making. So somebody who's pulling a lot of cups cards, this could have to do with a personal matter, a romantic affair, a marriage, or just plainly one's emotional intelligence, their emotional landscape. So that's what hearts is about. That's what cups is about. The cup runneth over, right? There's always been this association with cups and emotions in this way. feminine, the cup, right? The swords are correspondent with spades. Makes sense, right? This is the element of air, the north direction, and winter. So what does winter feel like, right? Winter is cold, merciless. There's a oppression, but it also involves ambition, courage. But all these things also include strife.
Exactly.
So pulling a swords card is involving the intellectual, involving power, involving thinking. It represents the mental end of life. However, pulling a lot of swords cards might point to habits, the need to change habits, the need to reflect on habits. A sword, literally in esoteric symbolism, divides things. It cuts one thing away from something it is not. So it's a divider. So someone who has a lot of swords cards needs to clean house. They need to get rid of something. They need to kill something. It's not a happy thing. And by kill, this is all allegorical, mind you. This is not something that people are happy to see, because generally swords cards are pointing at their own bad habits, and the need of painful change, right? If you need a surgery, you need to cut yourself up in order to get better, in order to heal, right? So swords cards, the winter is a time for enduring. And air is a very flighty element to work with. It can whip you, but it can also be soft, right? It's very unpredictable. Anyway, the next one is wands, and wands are equivalent to clubs. And this is the element of fire, the direction of south, and the season of summer, which makes sense, right? Fire, summer, south is hotter. Fire and wands represent change.
I got that fire for you.
What does fire do? Fire changes. It flickers. It is activity. It's movement.
I'm too deep for some people. They don't understand.
Growth, creation, creativity, presumably. Intelligence as well, but inspiration, determination. All these things involve some sort of energy. So a lot of, if you are to pull a lot of wands cards, the theme always is that something is being created. There's a passion. There's initiative. There's a trailblazing. The situation is very heated, right? There's a lot going on. It's not placid. It's not calm. It's energetic. So interesting note here, right? Because how you would describe fire is the alchemical symbol of wands. Interesting, right? And lastly, when it comes to the suits, we're talking about what in some decks is called coins, what in some decks are called pentacles, and what in other decks are called discs. So it depends on what deck you're picking up, but it's either coins, pentacles, or discs. They're all the same thing, just different names, okay? This corresponds to the suit of diamonds in the regular deck. As we can presume, the direction is east. It represents east. And the season is spring, right? The last one left. The element, again, the last one left, is earth. Pentacles, discs, coins are an earth card. So it is in respect to material possessions, money, finances, trades, all means of commerce, materialism, security, solidity. Earthy people need to feel like they're right. They need to feel like they have firm footing.
See, that's not you talking about me, because I'm an earth element. Capricorn, Taurus, Virgo, we're considered cardinal signs. See, we rule over like he say, the earthly, with the material things. Have you ever known a Capricorn that was broke? Because we get that bad. All earth signs, Taurus and Virgo, we always, especially Capricorns, money just come to us. We lucky. Well, should I say we blessed? Because Capricorn, see, people hate on us Capricorns because they don't understand us. We too deep for them. They think we they think that we just evil, really. But we not. We the sweetest people in the world. Until you get us wrong. We're not easy to love. We don't love easy, but when we love hard. That's why we very particular about the people that we involve into our affairs. Because we some deep people. I'm gonna tell you, Capricorn, we God's favorite. A lot of people don't, because look, you got to come through Capricorn. You got to come through Capricorn to get to God, baby. We the only sign that what begin and end the year. Who else can say that? And really, we are the mystical sea goats, part goat and part fish. We also what can rule the water and the land.
Need to feel like they're very convinced of the material world. They're not interested in abstract things. They are caught up in what is immediately present and what you can put your hands on. So in this way, to draw a bunch of coins,
we logical. Earth elements are logical people. You know, we how can we say, we logical, strategic. We analyze.
Cards, pentacle cards, disc cards, means that this reading has a lot to do with this willingness or this creation of stability. This person, it's in regards to work, right, or a career, or
we stable people. See, earth signs, we believe in, really, we got to see where it's going to be. That's why we analyze things. See, I can talk about me because I'm an earth sign. I know me, but I also know the other elements. But I know because I'm Leo rising, which is fire. See, that's why I say we embody all the signs that are in our birth chart, but especially the big three, what they call the big three, which is our sun sign, which is the sign that we're born under, Capricorn. Your moon sign, I'm a Taurus moon. Your rising sign, I'm a Leo rising in Saturn. And also your Venus and your North Node, you're supposed to watch that. My Venus, I have Neptune and Venus in Sagittarius, which is another fire sign. I'm a grand trine in fire and in air. I have all those elements in my chart highly aspected. They call them grand trines, and I have two of them. See, we are special people. See, when you get, everybody don't have a grand trine. We have all those elements in their chart like that, but I do. Some people might have one trine, but to have multiple trines, in my birth chart, they told me that I was a very, how could they say, an enigma.
Getting a house or providing for a family or any of these things that are very earthly. I feel compelled to say superficial, not in a derogatory sense, but your immediate concerns and immediate needs. These are the coins. These are the diamonds, pentacles, discs, right? Earthy. So that's the different suits. And in the same way, we also have this translation between the court cards. And by court cards, I mean in the regular deck, we're used to seeing the Jack, Queen, King. And in the tarot deck, it's very similar, except we have one other. So it goes the Queen, the King, the Knight, and the Page or the Princess. Again, depending on what deck you're looking at. So the Knight, and other decks too, you get the Prince as well. So at max, in the tarot deck, you have the Princess, the Prince, the Knight, the Queen, and the King. So there's the potential of all the court cards. So the Page cards or the Princess cards, all of these, by the way, represent a physical person. This person doesn't necessarily have to be alive. It could be somebody who's passed on,
Right.
that's influencing how we understand the reading. Again, not in a spirit way, but just to understand this person's mentality. The princess cards mean that whoever we're reading about would tend to be younger than the person who's getting the reading. So, you know, if they're a queen, they tend to be older. If they're a princess, they tend to be younger, right? Presumably. Usually the prince, the princess, or the page, or the knight as well, all tend to be somewhat naive or immature in some way. They're learning their faculties. They're learning how to use the gifts that they've been given. So it's not all bad, but it's to say that you should have the reading represent both the negative and the positive. When it comes to knights, though, knights always imply this aspect of action or vigor, or they're doing something. These are the people in the world that are making things happen. They are the movers and shakers of the world. They're doing things. They're affecting the environment. Princes are more...
You see here? This is my birth chart right here. I got it broke down in pages. See? See right here? I did, you see how I break it down? All the signs and everything, all the elements that are in your chart, in your birth chart. You put in your name, your place of birth, your time of birth. It puts here all the planets. It brings up all the planets and everything, conjunctions and sextiles. See, I have Neptune. See, in Sagittarius, is that I have Venus and Neptune conjunction. Conjunctions are the strongest. Is one of the strongest things in the chart that can happen. Sextiles are right, but conjunction, we have a conjunction in a sign. That's a very, very strong placement. See, so I'm gonna get back on it. I might come back on later on and do some of this here like I did, like I first started doing. You know, and then it breaks down your moves. It break it down like that there. When I started getting to know my birth chart, I started realizing why so many things that went on in my life, it happened. I mean, it's just, you can't explain it. Ain't nothing but the Most High. You see what I'm saying? See that? I have what in Lilith. They call that Black Moon Lilith, because they say that Lilith influences things. They say in a negative way, but I have Lilith in Aries. I'm an Aries Lilith, and I also have Jupiter. Jupiter is also my mid. It's also my mid heaven is also in Jupiter, and my Cryon. All that's in Aries. See, Lilith means you have 3 planets in one sign at the time of your birth. I told me I'm an enigma. That's why I've always been different. I always stood out from people. I never in school. I was always different. I was always different. People just don't understand me. The older people always say you an old soul because I knew things that other children didn't know. See, I was on a different level from them. You know, that's why they didn't understand me like that. I told you I'm a deep individual. I also have a kite attached to my I have a kite symbol also attached to those trines. See, I tell you, I told you I'm a deep person. That's why people don't understand me. See, Scorpio, I'm a Scorpio North Node in Uranus. That's what I'm in now. That's what the life purpose is in this lifetime. See what I'm talking about? So it teaches you everything. It broke down everything. Trine and Mars, Mercury. I have Mercury in Aquarius. Mercury is a strong planet. Aquarius is air element, but see, air elements, they control communication. I ain't gonna give all that to y'all now. Let me finish this here. Look, see how we don't get started on something else.
They're existing. It's not to say they do nothing, but it's to say that knights are especially involved. And the negative side of this is that they can be extreme and they can be impulsive. And you can see how I'm listing all these court cards, and you can kind of imagine different people in your life that go along with these cards. That's the whole idea of a reading. It's all about association. And presumably, just to kind of quick get this through.
That's right. That's why
the queen.
That's why I say, prophet. That's why people see. Everybody doesn't know what we know. See, you know to see. That's why I say a lot of people just when they watch tarot or when they look at their horoscope, they just focus on that sun sign, and they wonder why a lot of times it doesn't resonate with that with them. That's because you have more. We really embody all signs in the zodiac, like you said. But you see, it takes, you have to learn how to master embodying those signs. See what I'm saying? And if you ain't woke, if you ain't trying to get this knowledge I'm trying to give you, you'll never learn how to master things. See, that's how you manifest.
Card is always going to be the maternal figure, the mother. And mind you, too, any of these court cards could be the actual person who's been giving the reading or getting the reading to themselves, if that makes sense. The person that the reading's about, they could be represented by the Knight of Discs or the Princess of Wands. You know, this could represent them, and their best friend could be the Queen of Cups, right? Anyhow, the Queen is going to be the mother figure, the emotional support, the one who has wisdom, solidity. So it's always going to be this kind of maternal essence. And subsequently, the king. The king is going to be the masculine side of that. So power, authority, the one who dominates, delegates, controls, representative of the father figure. So in this way, mother, father, queen, king, and whatever archetype that they're going along with. Okay, so that is your kind of like introduction or spread, or help you to understand different ways of interpreting all the different suit cards, the different ways that the regular deck translates to the tarot deck. But at this point, I need to talk about the triumph cards or the trump cards. And this is where we go away from the regular deck and into what is legitimately tarot and what is legitimately the esotericism, the occultism of tarot. Excuse me. So, yeah, gosh, there's a lot to get into, huh? The one to start with, and I'm not going to do all the tarot cards because I could literally do a whole session and then some, talking about the story that the major arcana, the trump cards, tell. There's a reason it goes from 0 to 21. There's a story in how the numbers go up. This has a lot to do with Kabbalah, but most notably, it's the story of the esoteric mysteries. So to follow in tarot and to study the occultism of the trump cards is the treasure trail of understanding the wisdom of secret societies. It's about stitching it all together. So in this way, I'm going to talk about the particular trump cards that are the hardest to understand. So I'm not doing them all. I'm talking about the ones that aren't so accessible to the layman. So first and foremost is the Fool card. The Fool card is not a fool in the way that we think about it. This is the one that is synonymous to the court deck, and that's the Joker. It's the reason the regular card deck has the Joker. It's because everything is originated at the Fool. That's why it's 0, not 1. And it being a 0 is immediately hinting you towards the paradox of what the Fool is. So in the story of Tarot, it all begins with the Fool. It's called the Fool's Journey. What does this mean? So in this way, the Fool is like the Godhead. The Godhead is completely realized, infinite, and is the all, but decides to make himself a fool, to shatter himself into a million pieces, to experience himself as a finite thing in the infinite world. This is the Fool. It only begins if the Godhead decides to fool himself, herself, all self, right? That's one way. Another way is that all truth, all fundamental truth at its root is paradoxical. This is referred to as the cosmic giggle, or the joker, or the fool. So what do I mean by this? Okay, Socrates' statement, the one thing that I know is that I don't know. This is a paradox. Okay, what do you know? And then you're like, well, I don't actually know that because I was told that. Well, I don't actually know this because this is something that came along to me as well. I guess the only thing I could say that I know is that I don't know everything. And in which case, that's a paradox. And in which case, ha, ha, ha. You know, as the example last week, right? Stone is the hardest thing that we know of, right? But molecularly speaking, it's actually got a lot of empty space in it, which is paradoxical. How does that make sense? So it's both empty, but also dense. And this is the cosmic giggle. This is the Fool. This is the paradoxical nature of the fundamental truth of all things. That to dig down and to really dig into it metaphysically means that there's a paradox waiting for you there. And this is the Fool's journey. So in this way, the Fool is the beginning and the end, right? The end wraps itself back into the beginning. It's Ouroboros. It's the snake eating its own tail. Gosh. So this is why the Fool is so important, and this is why we see the Joker in the deck, because of this tie to the esotericism. And so the Fool, if you're actually drawing that card and you're getting that card, it represents a new hope, a beginning. It also represents a childishness, a purity. I'm just going to go, you know, it's like a child deciding to run into a field just because it feels like it. Not to know where you're going, not to know what you're in for, but just to go and to have some levity. So it's actually a very positive card. So, you know, to the layman, right? Oh, the Fool. Oh, gosh, I don't want to be an idiot. It's quite the opposite. It's actually quite nice to get the Fool card. I enjoy that card quite a bit. Moving on, a card that is not so readily understood by the layman, the Hierophant. So without getting too much into it, if we track this word Hierophant back, in Latin we have Hierophantes, and then in Greek it's the same, Hierophantes, which means one who teaches the rites of sacrifice and worship, or literally meaning one who shows sacred things. Hieros means sacred. So in this way, it comes from the same root as enlightenment, to shine, the expounder of esoteric doctrines, one who teaches. So the Hierophant card is one of the top cards of the major arcana and is representing a type of illumination. So let's make this more digestible to everybody, right? So to give out this card or to deal this card, Hierophant, means somebody might say, oh, I'm going to get full woke and reach nirvana. No. So let me try to get this sensation. You realize that a number of things in your past are connected. They're connected and there's a lesson. It's kind of like one of those moments where like, how did I not see that before? Putting these different things together that you didn't think were connected before is enlightenment. To see that it's not just a bunch of garbage information and that there was a pattern through your life, and recognizing that pattern is illumination, is the sacred, is the esoteric, is the divine, is what the Hierophant brings. So to get that card means that you're going to realize something. You're going to realize something that was hidden from you, not maliciously, but you're now at a place to realize something that you couldn't before. So it's a good card, but you'll stand to be humbled by it. One of the highest, most, you could say, spiritual cards. Another one that isn't so accessible is the Aeon. It's spelt A-E-O-N, but it's the same as the word eon, E-O-N. And the Aeon is an indescribable amount of time. Infinite. Well, not necessarily infinite. You can't measure it. There's no way of knowing how long. That's the Aeon. But eon could be understood simply as a generation, a lifetime, a period of existence, or simply a long period of time. It's been used several different ways, but how I want to break this down in the story of tarot is in esotericism. This card Aeon is card number 20. So it's the second to last card in the story of tarot. The last card is the universe. So before the universe was created, there was the Aeon. So imagine with me for a second. Just imagine. I know this is pretty woo-woo stuff. But before the Big Bang, there was a pre-universe. And in this pre-universe, something was cooking up for a very, very long time. This period of time in the pre-universe is referred to as the Aeon. You can't measure how long this was going on because time is a matter of light. Light is time. So how can you measure something prior to the realization of light in the universe, right? How could you measure its time? So that's why it's Aeon, an indiscernible amount of time. The cooking up of the Big Bang, the cooking up of the universe itself. Again, this is the level of esotericism that we're dealing with when it comes to the real story of tarot. So that's what Aeon is in a nutshell. This next one, and the last one of the hard to understand, is the Magician. The Magician is also one of the top tier triumph trump cards. But instead of approaching this like the layman would, oh, a magician is somebody who pulls a coin from behind your ear, puts somebody in a box, chops them in half. No, nothing like that. Magic in the ancient sense is a supernatural art. It is a spiritual, divine sort of thing. The Magi were people who could predict the future. They were people who could do crazy things like levitate or put their arms through walls. You're talking about some badassery here. Magic, or maia, as the Greeks call it, is a form of art in understanding so thoroughly how things work in the universe on a metaphysical level that you can work it like art. And it was a priestly class of people, kind of super religious, not religious in the negative sense of religiosity, but like super spiritual. So you would dedicate your whole life, or you would dedicate everything to become a magi, to become a magus. The root of the word itself is essentially to have power. Now, to have power in the most altruistic sense, right? Because then we're starting to get into white lodge, black lodge, white magic, black magic, this whole topic. But know that the magician is the one working in the background of what is superficially available to the eyes in the universe. The magician is crafty and cunning in ways that one would never understand. They are advanced in knowledge that is not accepted or well spoken in the common grain of society. So usually getting the magician card means that something strange is afoot, something mysterious is going to show its head. Mysterious being very much tied to the very concept of magic itself, right? And the word magic too, oh gosh, I'm not going to get into it. I could do a whole segment on magic alone, so no, there's a big treasure trail here. But for our purposes, the magician is going to bring something inexplicable to the person that's being read. Now, to move on, I want to address, to finish this whole session, the cards that people assume are negative, right? Right at the beginning, I said that certain people don't want to get their cards read because they think they'll get a bad card. So let's talk about what those bad cards actually mean. So the most quintessential bad card, in quotes, is death. And in tarot, death is not physical death. The teenager in you is no longer living. I think if you're listening to this, you're at least a young adult. You are not that teenager anymore. And in this way, that you died. And the one that was reborn was the young adult you, or the you that you are now. And in this way, we die many times in life. Many, many, many times. When you move from one place to another, you move far away. This is a death. You no longer exist in that space. You will go exist somewhere else. And to those that would believe in the transmigration of souls and reincarnation, how is this not different? This is an allegorical death. So I'm actually quite relieved when there's a death card. I like it. It's very dramatic, and it means that something is going to get shook up.
Right.
There's going to be a tremendous difference. You're going to wave goodbye to the old way.
See, death is represented by Scorpio, because every card that comes up is represented by certain signs in the zodiac. See? But see, death really, sometimes it can mean a literal death, but most of the times it means an ending, a death to something, to the old, to usher in the new.
You're going to be plunged into a new way. So this could be you changing your personality. This could be a new career. This could...
Yeah, shout out to Metal Face. Salute, my brother. Peace and love.
Be breaking old habits and forming new ones. This could take several different forms, but death is a transition in tarot. Things need to be destroyed in order to be recreated, or things need to be destroyed to be created. It's like the wildfires in the Pacific Northwest or in the West or in Australia or so forth. The fire clears the ground for new growth to come up. So thus, death is necessary to clear the grounds to create something new. You know, if a garden grows way too many weeds, it might just be worth it to set fire to the whole thing at a certain point. So in which case, this death is very welcomed, right? The other taboo one is the devil. The devil in tarot.
See that? Guess who the devil is in tarot? The devil is us, Capricorn.
Well, I guess it does have something to do with the Christian devil, but it's not like the Christian devil. So the tarot devil card.
The devil in tarot represents what we call I'm trying to say, like the strong desires. That's what the devil means in tarot. It means like a strong desire, lust, things like that, physical. That's what the devil represents. It's a sensual card, really.
Represents being stuck, being convinced in the material world. What do I mean by this? I mean that you are stuck in a very shallow perspective. You can't see beyond your immediate circumstances. So you think that you're trapped. Mm-hmm. You think that you feel claustrophobic. You feel misunderstood. You feel
a mental conflict.
Debaucherous, anxious, depressed, because you have closed yourself into a bubble, a very narrow approach to life. The devil wants to convince you that the only thing that exists is the material world. So you neglect all of the abstract world, you neglect all of the ethereal, you neglect all of the spiritual, you neglect all that is beyond your immediate bubble, and you call that immediate bubble the everything, and you think that you have it all out. So getting the devil too also means that you are obsessed in some sort of carnal affair. So you think of like, people who are hedonistic, or what common culture calls fuckboys, that they're obsessed with the physical body of women, or women that are obsessed with the physical bodies of other men, or people who prey upon each other. This is the devil, in the sense that it's the individuals are only convinced of the flesh. Right. They're only convinced of, again, what is immediately presentable to their eyes, hedonism. And so it's getting the devil card means that there's something else that's happening here beyond this, but you're going to be convinced of a very small understanding of what's actually happening around you, or that you're digging up old habits from the past. So, say you had certain codependent tendencies, habits when you were younger. This old relationship style comes up again, and you have to relearn this lesson. This is the devil. It's exposing your former sins to yourself, making you reface and affirm the lessons that you've learned so that you can move on. And lastly, the bad card for the bad cards, or the most taboo card, is the Hanged Man. The Hanged Man is maybe the worst card to get, maybe, if you want to look at it like that. But what the Hanged Man means is sacrifice. And sacrifice is necessary. So in order to continue, something needs to be given up. So for instance, you want a new relationship, one with characteristics like this, but you're still in a relationship. So what do you need to do? Well, you need to break up. You need to sacrifice that relationship to get another relationship, right? Mm-hmm. So it's this age-old, you can't whatever your cake and eat it too, You can't have your cake and eat it. You have to give to get. And usually the thing that you have to sacrifice is something that you don't want to sacrifice. So the Hanged Man is you affirming what is most important. And it's not easy.
Earthly desires.
Sacrifice is not welcomed. As another example, if you want to move into the career field, that means you have to move to the city or whatever, right? You have to move to a different place. This means you have to sacrifice your relationships where you've been living. You have to sacrifice the way you've been living. You have to give that up, let that die in order to get, right? And that's the idea of the Hanged Man. So nobody likes that card because it's sobering. It's transitional. It's very intense. People don't like it because, again, it's always going to be you giving up something that you don't want to give up, but you have to give it up.
Right.
So, as a quick summary of all that I said, the history of taboo is, or the history of tarot is very convoluted.
That's taboo, ain't it?
There is a tremendous story to the trump cards in the major arcana of tarot. The court cards, the regular card decks, are married to tarot decks.
Right.
Their history is one and the same.
Yep.
It's no accident that magicians play with cards.
Symbolism. That's symbolism for you.
Think about it. The actual act of using tarot for divination is not conjuring spirits. It is delving into your subconscious.
Right.
It's
Exactly.
only telling you things that you already.
Listen, tarot is only telling you what you already know, what your intuition is telling you. You know how you have that something in the back of your mind is telling you something. You remember, it makes me think about when we were growing up, you had a cartoon. You remember that cartoon when they had the devil on one shoulder and the angel on another shoulder? All symbolism. They've been showing us this shit since we were born. And people just didn't see it. But I always saw it. That's why I say I was always different. I always saw things different and knew that there was something better or greater to what was really going on than what people could really see. See what I'm saying? Your subconscious. See, everybody have a superpower. When they make all these comic books, like you say, all them comic books and these stuff like that, it's all symbolism. It's all they ain't doing them but telling a story. People they've been feeding it down our throats all our life, and some people still too blind to see it. Right or wrong, Prophet? See, I'm here to tell the truth and nothing but the truth. I can't do nothing but tell the truth because I am the truth. I used to be, back in the day, I used to be hell on wheels. But everybody changed. Because it's time for a change. Because you're going to be right back here again going through the same old shit. That's what hell is. Continuing those same cycles because you didn't learn the lesson the first time. You didn't learn the lesson the previous time. So you got to come back and go through the same shit again. That's hell. Just like repeating the same thing over and over again, expecting to get a different result. Insanity. Your mind already tell you things. You already have that. Just like I be knowing this before, like this, when this shit happened here the other day with this motherfucker. I already knew it was gonna happen before it even happened. I could think about somebody and they'll pop up or call me or text me. If I'm lying, may the Most High take the breath out of my body right now. I'm what they call the high priestess. Well, the high priestess, the empress and the emperor are the two highest major arcana. He in the tarot. The emperor is the empress's counterpart. But when it shows up, even for a woman, it doesn't matter because it's all energy. See what I'm saying? Because we embody both, male, masculine and feminine. But see, the empress is the high priestess, and all the queens that are in the deck combined. See what I'm saying? See, the high priestess knows all, but keeps quiet. Just like they always say, you never let your left hand know what your right hand doing. Right? They've been giving it to us all our life. In sayings, in pictures and movies. It's been right in our face. Certain signs and symbols that are on buildings, they all tell a story and people don't even know it. Your subconscious be telling you something. Just like, you might have something come in your mind, say, don't do that. And then that second mind tell you, now go ahead and do it. That first mind is the intuition, see, telling you. That's why they always say you're supposed to follow your first mind. Ain't that what old people say? See what I'm talking about? I sit back here and I just think about all kinds of stuff. My mind just be going 100 miles an hour. I think too damn much. That's my problem. But see, you already know these things. But see, tarot, the cards, all they do is confirm what you already know subconsciously.
No, it's just making it clear to you. So if you can imagine having a readout, you're very confused in your head. If only you could get everything in your head into a kind of diagram or into a grid so that you could see it more clearly. That is what tarot is. Yes, it does involve the esoteric if you want to get into that. Yes, you can look into it more and get into all sorts of strange spiritual topics. But at the very surface, getting a reading is a check-in with yourself.
Right.
It's a way of checking in and gaining clarity and affirming your direction in life. Tarot, in its philosophy, is saying that everything is a process.
Mm-hmm.
One process leads to another process. Right. And even if you reach the end, you're going right back to the beginning.
That's why they call it.
And in this process of life, we always need to learn things. Even if I'm 97 years old, I still have to learn things. I'm still here to learn things. I'm still here to
see, some people think they know it all. But
in tarot, it's an allegory for life itself. All the major arcana, all the minor arcana are different archetypes, are different parts of life that are always going to be there. So it's an interesting way for us to reflect and for us to assess. So at the very least, we could use the cards to understand where we're at, to better understand the universe, to better introspect, or we could use the cards to investigate occultism. Or if none of this is really for you and you're just curious about it all, then this is to say that this is not devilry, this is not idolatry, this is not even conjuring spirits.
Right.
This is plainly archetypes.
That's it.
Archetypes. The things, the metaphysics that exist for everybody, everywhere, all the time.
Yep.
All right. And with that, I will close this session.
All right, family. I hope y'all enjoyed this. I always enjoy it. No matter how many times I listen, I've just listened to all of his, just about all of his, spiritual study sessions. But you always go, it's like, just like when you read a book or watch a movie, you always catch something that you didn't catch the last time. See what I'm saying? No matter how many times you watch or read something, you're going to always catch something that you miss. See what I'm saying? Then sometimes you got to touch up some of the things that you've already watched or listened to or read. You still got to continue feeding yourself with that knowledge. At least you forget it. See what I'm saying? So my loves, I done been on over 2 hours now. I might come back on later on tonight, I'm not sure. This depends on how I'm feeling or what, if the most, like I say, I'm divided by the Most High. If the Most High say, well, Deanna, that's my name. All of y'all know me as Empress. But if the Most High say, well, Deanna, get on up, and do such and such a thing, I do it because I'm finally got it. See? Voices that come in your head, there ain't nothing but the Most High talking to you or your spirits and your ancestors and the angels. Because I work with Archangel Michael. Well, I work with all of them. Michael, Raphael, Gabriel, all of them. That's why I've always been protected, you see. From the womb to the tomb, baby. Blessed and highly favored am I. I know this for a fact. Let's see now. He doesn't believe in God. CG doesn't believe in God. I believe in God. I believe in Source, whatever you want to call him, because there's no way in the world that just something so magnificent could just have been a big bang. I just can't believe that. I can't wrap my mind around that. You know, I just don't see that. But you know, I know it's a deeper meaning to things, and I know that we are spiritual souls living a human experience, having a human experience. This is what these bodies that we in. They ain't nothing but avatars. The movie Avatar. See what I'm talking about? You know, that's why some people say when you awaken, you come out that sleep, that veil that's been placed over your eyes all your life. With that pineal gland, what they call the eye of God, that third eye, and you start seeing through all the bullshit. That's the awakening, because you can see through the illusion. You can smell bullshit a mile away. So, my love, this your girl, it was Queen. Thank you, my love. Thank you. I try to bring y'all these gems. I'm trying to give y'all. Well, I know you know, Prophet, because you be in that chat going off. But I'm trying to, you know, that's my purpose in life. See, my North Node deals with spiritual things. Scorpio, it deals with spiritual things. My ninth house, Pisces, that deals with spirituality. See what I'm talking about? That's why it's so important for you to know these things. And see, I always talk about I'm a daddy's girl. I always talk about that. And I tell you that my father was a minister. See, that's why I say nothing happens for a reason. Everything happens for a reason. There's no such thing as a coincidence. From my birth, it was already written in the stars for everything that happened in my life to happen. When my biological mother gave me to my parents, all this was already written in the stars because it was already meant to be. It happened to put me on my path. You see, my father, I got the basics in religion. I grew up with that. So that was a part of my training to get me where I am now. You understand? See what I'm saying? This shit deep. But people don't understand it. This shit is real deep. I was a daddy's girl. My father was a minister. The ninth house. My father was a Pisces, by the way. Okay. And I'm a Pisces in the ninth house. See how all this shit connected? And the ninth house is called the house of the father. I can't make this shit up, my babies. And the ninth house deals with spirituality and religion. It all has been predestined, my loves. I can't tell you this enough. See, I get passionate about this thing because I know what it's about. I know what the real deal is. I know the inner knowing of all these things. That's what I'm trying to give everybody. See, my purpose is what? To uplift the conscious collective, to help heal this world, to heal this land, to raise the vibrations. That's the only way we're going to heal it, because we all vibrate. But see, when you're on that low frequency, when you still in that lower man, that shadow, you ever thought about that? You know how when we were growing up, everybody had a shadow. You can see it when you walk around. You see that shadow. See what I'm talking about? This shit go real deep. How deep does the rabbit hole go? You got the choice to take what you want. You want to take the red pill or the blue pill. This your girl, Empress Queen. Always go within, so you never go without, my loves.